Hello, everyone, and welcome to the 2016 Premier League season preview this time. Last time we did a review, and Dwayne Johnson was here. It was my most viewed video ever on my YouTube channel, but also my most disliked. So I'm not sure what to take from that. But Dwayne Johnson is here. Tell us a little bit about yourself.
Well, like I say, Josh, it was the most liked video because I'm American. That's why they didn't think I knew what I was talking about. But other than that, my name is Dwayne. I go by DJ Redcap. I run a social media women's soccer group that we talk about a lot of the NWSL. If you've heard of that, in U.S. Women's National Team, we cover a lot of those games. So I run that with a bunch of my friends, and you can see us doing a lot of stuff on YouTube and other channels. We'll probably talk about. I'll probably get a link to that at the end of this. But I'm a big Premier League fan. I watch every game for the most part, and I'm glad to be on here, Josh, again. So thanks for having me.
I think it's essential, as you brought up, the fact that we have an Australian and an American previewing the English Premier League. So all good. Okay, so this episode, we're going to run through every club from A to Z. Even though there's no Z, we're going in that order. So first up, Arsenal. I'd love to hear what you think. How do you think their season's going to go? What position do you think they're going to finish in? And what transfers have you liked this season? Or just the few that they've had?
Well, for me, it was naturally the Swiss midfielder. How do you pronounce the last name? It's Xhaka.
Xhaka? Yeah.
Yep, Xhaka. I think that's going to be great for them because they need that kind of destroyer bet in the midfield that's going to control the play. A lot of people are comparing them to Vieira, even though they're saying hold off on those comparisons. I think that's a great signing. But for me, always with Arsenal, I don't know if I've even said it last on the review show. It's this team that has I almost call it the simplest needs because it's so glaring. It's been glaring for the last couple of seasons. And if they got those two needs and they still have a time to do it, then they can win the Premier League easily because they have tons of great midfielders and wing players and everything else. Central defender, striker. They get a top-level striker that'll pop in 25, 30 goals. They get a central defender that's going to be good back there. I can see them easily winning the league. So I have them once again as a team that if I have to choose, it's weird with Arsenal because you never know. And especially last year, it's funny. Arsenal finished above United, Chelsea, Spurs, Liverpool, and City, and then end up second. Only happens to Arsenal. So I see them probably finishing maybe. It's weird. It's say fourth, but I can see them third. But that's the only reason. I'll tell you why later. I have them at fourth, and it's probably going to make some people mad. But I have them at fourth. But I think it's a good finish. I feel like a lot of teams have improved this year, and they've done as usual. He does enough tinkering where he's going to keep them as a competitive team. They'll probably be in the top, fighting in the top two, top three the whole season. Maybe sometimes they'll even be top of the league. But then they'll succumb to injuries and they'll fall back into fourth and still consider it a pretty decent year for them.
I definitely agree with you with the striker and defensive needs. That is something that they really need to get sorted out. And Wenger does need to spend some money. I know he may not think that's particularly ethical, but unfortunately in football nowadays, that is what you have to do. In regards to rumours about the transfers to Arsenal, they have no rumours still of a striker. There was talks of Lacazette, but he's rumoured to be given another contract at Lyon. And in terms of central defenders, Mustafi and Fabian Schär have been rumoured to be. There's been offers put in by Arsene Wenger. He's still not saying anything about in press conferences. He's all very secretive about this. Mustafi and Schär, either one of them, I think they would be a great signing. Do you know much about them?
No, I haven't heard much. I haven't actually even seen them play. I haven't heard much. It's like he will sign those type of players where you might not see him much, but it'll be good signings. And once he gets them in his team, it's usually players that can play within the system well. But I don't know much about them, so I think that it'll be. It's funny. I trust him with his signings, and it's like because all of his signings are good. They usually fit right in. They play within that style, and they're usually quality players. So it's like you almost like, and I can understand Arsenal players. They usually, they know you guys know what you want. It would be great if you could bring a Lacazette to your team or something like that, but the signings that he is probably looking at and he will probably bring in will be solid signings. It'll be good enough where you'll definitely keep top four easily. So,
yeah, I'm predicting for Arsenal second position. I think they've got still a very similar team to last year. Small improvement with Xhaka. It's going to be incredibly close this season, though. So they could finish, you would think, anywhere from second to sixth with the amount of quality of the teams that we have this season. Right. I think it'll be that close. But I think they'll just edge it out. They have, some experience from last year. They know where it went wrong. It may be another typical Arsenal season where they look like they're going to get it done, and then they fall in January of course, with some big injuries and a big loss, and then suddenly regain form in May. So that could definitely happen again, but I'm predicting second, but still it'll be very, very close. Now, moving on to Bournemouth, who last season survived the Premier League, their first season in the Premier League. How do you expect them to go this season? Will they survive another one?
I think they will. I actually was high on Bournemouth last season. I just like how they play. They seem like a pretty solid team for the most part, and just always one that could. They were giving big teams tough games a lot of the times. Some of the signings they made, like Lewis Cook from Leeds, he's a prospect that a lot of people have been high on, and they think it's going to be a pretty good player. They got Nathan Ike on loan from Chelsea. He's a good young player that Chelsea naturally they send out a whole team on loan. So I think even when he was on loan last year, he played pretty good. And I think he'll be really good this year for them. And then also I'm really looking at Bournemouth because they have the American Emerson Hyndman on a free transfer from Fulham. He's considered one of our highly regarded young Americans playing over in England. And this is going to be his first time at the top flight.
Him also and Lewis the Cook. Australian. Yeah, Brad Smith.
Oh, yeah. Yeah, Brad Smith.
So all representing the countries.
Right. So I think I can't wait to see how good Emerson is in the Premier League, or if he's bad, we'll see. But Lewis Cook, I think, is going to really help them in their midfield, and they should be actually a pretty good team. I think 12th place probably about for them, I could see.
Yeah, I'm predicting 15th place because obviously they don't have as strong a squad as some of the other teams. There's been a little bit of activity in the transfer window. But particularly for me, a big loss for them will be Richie, who was key to them last season. He was a great midfielder, and he had a lot of talent, and he had a lot of exposure to big matches, and he was experienced and he knew what to do. So that is a decent loss for them. But still, they've got their manager Eddie Howe, who did great things from last season. So I'm predicting them to finish in 15th.
I agree. I do agree.
So moving on to Chelsea this season, they've brought in their new manager Antonio Conte after last season's, I guess you could call it, a disaster. I think this season they're definitely going to do better, and they're going to fall in that group of teams, your Liverpool, your Arsenal, your Man United, your Man City, who are all going to fall very closely to each other because they're all so talented this season. But I am predicting Chelsea to finish in 6th this season. Where are you predicting them to finish?
I had them actually a spot lower, but then when I was thinking about when you're talking, I was like 6th, but I have them at 7th. I feel like Conte is going to be a great signing. He's a player that came out of nowhere for a lot of people and was good. So he'll help their midfield. The Belgian forward, Batshuayi, is it called, from Marseille?
Yeah.
Yep. He's a good young player to look out for, and I think he's gonna, with Conte, I think he's gonna use him the right way. I think the rebirth of Eden Hazard is going to be a big thing, and see how he's used, and we're going to see where Diego Costa, how he plays. He might end up be out there. We don't know what they're going to do with him. But still, I just feel like the other teams improved a bit more, and he's still, there's going to be a learning curve with this team a lot and stuff too. So I see them about 7th or 6th too. I just don't, as much as they struggled last season, and without Champions League, they might be able to push on a bit more because other teams will be playing in Europe. But I just see about 6th. Like I said, I had about 7th for them, to be honest. So.
Yeah. I do see them doing particularly well in regards to their managerial aspect with Antonio Conte. I do believe that is their biggest asset, because you saw what he did with the Italian team at the Euros. The Italian team really didn't have much talent to them, but he knew how to get the best out of them, and he displays, he makes the team display great teamwork. Still 6th, it'll be very tight, as I said, all those teams up the top, but, I don't think they can crack into the top 4 and really make an impact. No Europe, as you said, but I still think they have other things on their mind that they really do have to work out.
I agree with that too, definitely with Chelsea. I don't know. I just don't feel high on this team as much, and it's weird because Chelsea, after with Mourinho and just years before, we've always been so high on them for how they play, but not this season with Chelsea.
Okay, now wow, my throat. Now talking about Crystal Palace, last season they fell certainly near the end, and we were expecting maybe they could be relegated. Obviously, they weren't, and they managed to definitely pull it together. I think that they'll actually have a decent season this season, and I've put them as finishing 11th because Alan Pardew, for me, is a great manager. He knows, like Antonio Conte, how to get the best out of his team. In regards of transfers this season, they've signed Andros Townsend from Newcastle, and I've also found that they've signed Tompkins from West Ham. So these are both people who have great talent. Townsend obviously a little older than Tompkins, but I think it's a good mix and it will definitely add depth to their team. What do you think about their transfers?
Yeah, I like their transfers. Also, the French goalkeeper Steve Mandandande.
Yeah,
I'm
Mandela. Yeah.
butchering names. Yeah, I think he's going to be a good one for them to probably shore up that goalkeeping with them, for them this year. It's weird with Crystal Palace because last year I was so high on them because they said he was kind of, because I like Pardew too. He was kind of going to just let him go for it, even against tougher teams. He was going to play wide open and really go at them and not be afraid. And they looked like early in the season they were going to go at teams and not be afraid. Then they struggled so much, and it just seemed like they were all down on themselves. But with Andros Townsend, and then also, like I said, with Tompkins, I could see this team actually. I had them 15th because I still kind of shaky with Wilfred Zaha and Yannick Bolasie because people are so high on Bolasie, but he's to me just too inconsistent. And then who's going to really bang in goals at that striker position? But I can see them being a team that, they're probably going to start off good, and then those players are going to like drop off and probably just they're going to have some good games, but not enough to really have this team probably push to the top 10 for me personally. But I had them at 15th. It's like they're not going to get relegated, but I don't expect them probably to finish any higher really than probably, like you said, 11th if they have a good season.
Now, the loss of Dwight Gale and Alex McCarthy in the transfer window, do you think that'll affect their season much?
Yeah, well, Dwight Gale, he was one of those players that was kind of like fringe. It seemed like, and maybe wherever he landed, he'll actually get his confidence back. But McCarthy, to me, was a big one. I think he was a good, a solid midfielder for them, and that's going to affect them in that midfield greatly. I don't know how their midfield, how they'll like probably regroup and do it, whatever. With Kabay, I believe, still there. So it's like, but I just don't. I don't know. Kabay, I feel like sometimes is a bit overrated. That's my personal opinion. I'm like, people like him and think he's talented, but McCarthy was such a good gritty player for them in that midfield, and I think they're going to miss that a lot actually when they go up against a lot of tougher teams when they're trying to, they're playing with their backs against the wall and have to defend a lot of the time.
Definitely agree with you there. And Kabay, I definitely think he's overrated, and he just doesn't offer as much on the pitch as you may think he does. Obviously, he's generally a big name because he plays on the France side, but he just never gets in the starting 11. And for me, never shows that amount of talent. Now, moving on to Everton last season, they definitely had a disappointing season, in terms of what we've seen before from Everton. They're a big club and we know what they're capable of. Last season, it just wasn't their year. This season, I don't think it's going to be their year either. I'm predicting them to finish in 10th. Where do you predict them to finish?
I had them exactly at 10 too. I think we're head on with them because they just seem like a team where people are going to look at Everton thinking they're going to offer more with players like Ross Barkley. What's the one guy that they have that a lot of players are high on? It's like they have players that people look at so highly, and they're aging too with players like Leighton Baines. The one right back, the Irish right back, I believe his name. They're very high on him too. Seamus Coleman, players like that. People are so high on them, and they just it's more so like the name recognition with Everton. These players, so you expect a lot out of them, and they usually don't produce as much with them. So I don't predict Everton to be higher than 10. They're gonna be one of those teams that really struggles a lot. Goalkeeping was a big issue for them. How everyone was like treating Howard. Like, I'm not a big Tim Howard fan, don't get me wrong, but people were acting like he was the cause of all their problems. I think their whole defense, and then with the loss of John Stones too, I just don't see this team doing any good defensively. They're going to let in a ton of goals this year, but 10th place would probably be where they sit at.
Yeah, and Tim Howard's left the club as well. And I'm not sure if they're going to replace him in the first team with Stecklenburg, but Stecklenburg has signed for the club. He's a good goalie. He's certainly not getting any younger, but we'll see what they do, whether they put him first or if they choose another goalie. But yeah, for me, 10th, they do have their new manager, Ronald Koeman, who was managing Southampton, and he did really a great job with Southampton. He can do a great job with Everton as well. But with the team that they've got, they still have some good players. One of my favourites is Jagielka in the back, but I don't think they have it this season, and I am predicting them to finish in 10th. Now, the next team that we're looking at is Hull City. Where are you predicting them to finish this season? It'll be their first season back in the Premier League after a season in the Championship.
And see, I see Hull City going down, really. Like I said, I didn't get to – I remember the season when we were up, I liked Brucey, and I liked what he did with the team. He always tried his best with them. I just was never – it was one of those scenes where they had – they have a few talents here and there, but it's just never enough really with Hull because – attacking, it would seem like goal scoring, getting goals was always the hardest thing for a team like Hull. They're trying to find someone to put in the back net. And I think especially this year with so many teams getting so much money and investing so much in their clubs, I think Hull is going to suffer again defensively and with trying to score goals. Those are like, if you suffer in those two things, you're just like doomed, drop back into that relegation zone. So as much as I'm happy to see Hull back, I just don't think they even have enough to really improve. I mean, they haven't improved enough to survive, and it's going to be like that, I think, for a couple of years now for a lot of these teams that come up where they won't have enough to survive, and a lot of them will drop back in and just go back into the championship.
Yeah, Hull City, their transfer window has not been good. They've let go of Diami and have brought in Mannion, who obviously we don't know a lot about. I don't know a lot about Mannion. Obviously not a big name player. That's all they've done in the transfer window, so I do not expect them to go much further. Steve Bruce, he's not convincing me as a manager. I don't think they have the power to stay in the Premier League, and I think they're going to finish dead last in 20th. Where are you exactly predicting them to finish?
I think I have them 20th as well. But see, I like Brucey because United, but I feel sorry, Brucey. Bye-bye.
Okay, now moving on to Leicester, the Premier League winners last year. I don't think any of us expected it. I really don't think it's going to happen, but do you think they can win it again this season?
No, I don't see them winning it again. I would love it if they even finish top 4, but I don't even have them finishing that high. I think for Leicester, it was an amazing season. I started pulling for them. I've been pulling for them probably since December to actually pull it off, just because, it was like, oh, it's not a big money team going to win it, or the usual suspects. You want a little bit of parity, as we have in our NFL over here, where a random team can win the Super Bowl every year. So it was great to watch, but I think it's going to be too much with Europe. The team really didn't improve that much because they couldn't pull in big names still, because people still look at it like, oh, it's Leicester type thing. And I just didn't. I did like their one signing, Mendy, the French midfielder. I think he's going to end up being good. He won't be Conte, but he'll be a good player for them. But I just still don't feel like they're going to have enough to survive the season, especially if they lose Mahrez to Arsenal.
They've also signed Ahmed Musa, who I think will be a good signing from them, from CSK Moscow. Yeah, speaking of Mahrez, I was reading rumours that he may be going to Chelsea as well. He was spotted in the same hotel as Antonio Conte. Arsenal as well, also bidding for him. But I've seen a picture of the Leicester manager who was holding on to Mahrez, posting a picture saying that Mahrez is not going anywhere, and I definitely think they need to keep Mahrez, because if they still have Mahrez and Vardy, they can definitely do damage up front. I'm predicting them to finish in 8th this season. Clearly, they won't be able to win the title again. All the other teams have improved so much around them. I think they're going to know how to stop a fairy tale from like last year happening again. Where exactly do you predict them to finish on the table?
I think I predicted a little bit more of my heart than with my mind. And it's just the fact that I want them to do good. So I picked them to finish 6th, even though I was asking a lot. But it's like, I just would hate to see this team be just one of those really good, I feel like it is going to end this way. They were really good one season and just never even repeat close to what they did. So I have them 6th, where at least, maybe a little bit of Europa next season afterwards for them.
How do you think they're going to go in the Champions League? Because they've got that to deal with again this season.
I think it's going to be tough for them. I actually have them as a team that's going to end up dropping into Europa, depending on their group. Even for me, I have a feeling with Leicester that they're going to run into teams that from different different leagues, and they're going to still struggle. So it didn't matter to me. I was thinking about this like a couple of months ago. Even no matter what group they end in, it's going to be real tough for them, because this is the first time for all these players playing in Europe, and this is top 5. This is the Champions League. So maybe if they were the champion of Austria or something, it's going to be a tough time. Then they got to go to a Premier League game. So I really think the Champions League, they're going to end up getting like third place in this group, and if they squeak 2nd, it might hurt them even more in the Premier League, where they will end up definitely 7th or 8th.
It's definitely going to be a big task to have to balance the Premier League and the Champions League, depending on how far they go. Always in Europe, it's a privilege to play there, but it can be a burden on your Premier League success. Now, moving on to Middlesbrough, who are in the Premier League, back in the Premier League after being in the Championship for a number of years. Now, you were telling me earlier you don't know a whole lot about them, but from what you have heard, how do you think they're going to go this season?
Well, one of my friends who lives in England, he was telling me he was high on them, because Middlesbrough, he said, was a team that was always right at the cusp of making it into the Premier League, but they didn't do it because they just needed like one more player, a little bit more experience playing in the Championship before they made that push on. So I'm actually thinking they're going to be one of those teams that actually survives and they'll stay up. I can see them hovering about 17th, 15th, but surviving. So it's like, I'm really excited to see them. Brad Guzan went to them, which is interesting. They made a bunch of money with Gaston Ramirez on a free transfer from Southampton, so it'll be nice to see players like that on their team. But it's a team that I'm really looking forward to seeing, and I think they're going to be the one team that came up that will actually survive.
Me too. I'm definitely looking forward to seeing Middlesbrough playing, and I think they are going to go the best out of all the relegated teams. However, with the quality of the signings that every other team has made, they haven't made many. Looking down at my list here, they've signed their biggest signings have been two goalies, which are Guzan and Valdez. So, fairly big goalie names. Not the biggest clearly, but is that really going to add a lot to their, Premier League roster and the rest of the team on the field? Yes, the goalie is an essential part, but in regards to the rest of the team, they have, some talent that they have from the championship in the last season they played. But I don't think it'll be enough for me. I wish them all the best. I think they're definitely the most passionate out of the championship teams. They really want it, but I'm predicting them to finish in 18th. Moving on to Southampton now, who have lost their manager, Ronald Koeman. How do you think they're going to fare without him this season?
Southampton's always a fun team to watch because they always bring up the next crop of players that the big teams are going to pluck from, to be honest with you. I have them finishing ninth, but I think they're going to be still a team that you're not going to want to go play them at St. Mary's. It's always tough to go to play Southampton at St. Mary's. I think it's going to be an adjustment because they're going to be adjusting to a new manager. Their signings really not much. They did get that Danish midfielder from, which is going to help them a bit, and like I said, Nathan Redmond from Norwich. But other than that, I just don't see them much better than probably ninth, hovering probably above Everton at most, which is good. You'll win some good games. You'll lose to some teams you shouldn't lose to, but I don't see them making much noise in the Premier League this year.
Redmond and Højbjerg are, I think, great signings for Southampton, and I predict them in ninth, exactly as you said. I think they'll do well this season. They're the team that you don't want to play, and big teams like Manchester City and Arsenal, I think, will be losing against Southampton because they are so dangerous and they have such great players. But unfortunately for them, I think the worst part about their off-season has been the transfer window, because some of the signings that have been made for other clubs, they've lost. So that are players like Wanyama, Mane, Pele, McCarthy. There's a big list here of big players that they've lost. They've also got their new manager, Puel, the Frenchman. I don't think he's as good as Ronald Koeman from what I've seen of him. We'll see what he can do. He's not experienced in the Premier League, clearly, and it is a big change coming into the Premier League. But still, I think they'll do well this season and finish ninth. Moving on now to Stoke City. I think the biggest part of their off-season has been signing the Welsh Pirlo. What do you think of their signing of Joe Allen for £13 million?
The Welsh Pirlo, Joe Allen, one of my favorite players of all time. No, it's funny with this team, though, watching them last season. I actually liked watching them. Some of the signings that Stoke was making was absolutely unreal because people are like, how did they get that player? How did they get that player? They really adapted to the playing style that their manager wants out of them. So it's one of those things where they're going to be scary. I have them finishing 11th, though, which might not sound good. But the fact is that going to Stoke and playing was always tough. But when they actually put together a decent enough side, which Stoke kind of did last season, they could have a chance where they could slip in the ninth. But it's going to be one of those teams that's going to be sitting right at the middle because it's going to be a lot of teams that just can't break through right now so much with all the money big money players coming to the Premier League. But I think Joe Allen will help them a bit. If you want me to go back, just answer that question. But I don't think it's going to be enough because I never was high on Joe Allen to begin with, even at Liverpool. So.
Yeah, playing at Stoke is clearly never easy. And I do think that Joe Allen will be able to do it on a cold, wet and rainy Tuesday night at Stoke. I think he will be a good player for them. Clearly not one of the world's best players, but you saw what he offered for Wales at the Euros. And I think he's a very handy player. I'm predicting them to finish in 12th, so still probably not the position they'd like to be finishing in. I would imagine they want to be finishing in the top 10. Look, they've got good players like Arnautovic and Shaqiri, but apart from that, there's not as many great players as you would expect from we have seen at Stoke before. It's going to be an all right season for them, so I'm predicting 11th. Now, moving on to Sunderland, I think they're going to have a similar season to what they've had, for the past three. I'm predicting them to finish in 17th. They're going to be, fighting that relegation battle, just survive it at the end. Their manager will be crowned as a hero. Then he'll probably get sacked. Where do you expect them to finish this season?
I had them probably. It's funny we're having these teams like right at the same place. I had them in 16th, and I call it like the Moyes effect, where we have his team just good enough to get by, but they won't be good enough to beat anyone really until they'll get results against some of the worst teams. But Sunderland's just been a team where it's just like, what is wrong with them? Because a lot of times they're always in that like drop zone, and they'll just do just enough to get out, and then they'll just sit right there. I like some of what Moyes is doing already a bit. You know, he brought in Januzaj. He's bringing a lot of the United rejects in, Januzaj, Paddy McNair. So it's going to be, they're going to have some talent, a little bit. It's going to be an improvement on talent for Stoke because they don't get me, I mean, for Sunderland, don't get me wrong, but it's not enough to get them any higher than like you said, 17th or 16th. So, I mean, they'll be interesting to watch. I want to see what Januzaj does there because he'll get the start and then like how he integrates the Moyes way of playing at Sunderland. But I don't see this team doing much at all. And they're probably going to be a team that doesn't win many games. They'll get that one shot game as always against a team like Chelsea or something, but other than that, they're not going to do much this season.
I do like the young guns that they've brought in. Yeah, for example, Januzaj. I think that's a good improvement instead of having people that are generally older. Like you have your Jermaine Defoe, and he does great things for Sunderland when he plays well. But to bring in young players and give them a chance, they'll really be fighting for it. They want to be noticed. Januzaj wants to be noticed by Man United. Do you reckon he'll actually ever play a full season at Manchester United? Do you reckon he'll get noticed this season at Sunderland and really turn it on?
Well, I've said on my Twitter, this is his make or break here because everything is falling in place for him to either show out or not. He's playing for a manager that believes in him and that will give him first team action. He's getting a loan into a Premier League side. He'll have to scrape it out and fight because it won't be like a United where you're going to play with a ton of talent. You're going to be playing on a team where you might be one of the more talented players, so there's going to be a lot of expectations out of you, and you're going to be fighting for, to get out of relegation. So if he makes it this year, then he can make it at United. If he doesn't make it this year, then I can see that they're going to just sell him over to someone because it's really a make or break year for him. And will he make it or not? I don't know. That remains to be seen. I'm leaning towards the no as much as I loved Januzaj when he first broke in because I just thought he was such a talented player, but I just can't see – I don't know. It's really going to be with him to see if he really wants it now. So, and excuse my phone in the background. But
it'll probably be a very tough season for Sunderland this season. Now, moving on to Swansea City. Last season, they were falling close to the relegation zone, and they definitely would have liked. I don't think they're going to make much of a difference this season. I do think they'll move a little bit further up the table. They have definitely some good players on offer. I'm predicting them to finish 13th. How do you think their season will fare?
I had Swansea 12th. Swansea's a weird team to me because it's like you'll look at their team and think they'll be a decent little side. They'll shock you. They'll win some tough games. It's hard to go and play in Swansea, but I just don't see them think they've made much of an improvement to actually get higher than where they'll higher than even 10th, to be honest with you. So I had them at 12th. I've seen some of the signings they made. There was a lot of players like Leroy Fair from QPR and stuff like that. Yeah, he's one of those players that, for a lower team that would be good, but it's not enough where it's going to be enough talent to get you over that hump that they're probably looking to get over. So they're about a 12th place team, I think.
They've also lost big names like Ayew, Gomez, and Williams, who were essential to their survival last season. Do you think they'll be able to manage without those big name players?
I loved Ashley Williams. I think that's going to be a major loss. Just his heart. I remember in one of the games I was watching with Swansea, it seemed like he carried them as a defender, was carrying them as much, just heart and soul, as much as he was trying to push the team forward. It's going to be tough because you lost a lot of your core and a lot of players that really were the ones that knew how to fight and get through. So I think 12th is just more so off of the Swansea name, but I think it's going to be a team that might be fighting for that above that relegation slot, to be honest with you.
And the new manager, Guilin, do you know much about him, and do you think he will be successful as a manager?
See, and I don't know much about him as a manager, but the thing is one of those things where it's going to be like, how quickly does he adapt to the players that are brought in? I don't know if if he's really the one that was looking, if he feels like he brought in players that he's going to need, but it's going to be really adaptation to the league as quick as possible. If he doesn't adapt, they're going to fire him by December. If he does, then he'll have this team probably, like I said, still with the talent he has. If he has them even firing all cylinders, they're no better than a 12th place team, in my opinion. So,
yeah, he's been going around a lot of the Italian clubs. He's managed at Palermo and Parma, and also Monaco in Monaco, and he spent a lot of time in that place of Europe. a move to the Premier League is definitely a big shock. Now he's had a bit of time over the summer to work with his team and understand them better. It's going to be very hard for him, but I think it'll be the players that'll get him across the line rather than his managerial skills. Adapting to the Premier League, I definitely will think it will take more than one season. So I really hope that Swansea do give him another chance and give him another year to be able to, work with Swansea, really understand them as a team, get to know them, and take them back to a higher position, because I definitely think they are capable of it. Now, moving on to Tottenham. Tottenham were a team that kind of shocked everyone last season. We knew the talent they had, but to finish third was definitely a big achievement for them. Can they finish in the top four again this season?
I have them actually finishing in the top four. I felt like they didn't probably for their youth they look like they overachieved, but I think they have these young players are going to be good young players for years to come. So they probably reach their potential a bit quicker than a lot of teams thought. There'll be a team always fighting for top 3 or 4 or even top 2 and maybe even get a first place finish within the next couple of seasons. But it's going to suck for them now because they're going to develop theirs as like their own homegrown talent, while teams like City and United and even Chelsea and Arsenal are probably going to buy players. So it's really going to be tough. But I think they have a good enough young talent that they will be a top 14 for the next couple of seasons. And it really depends on the growth of players like Dele Alli and just like the little signings they bring to complement Harry Kane and all these other players they have in the squad. So I had them as number 3 this year, to be honest.
I'm tipping them to finish in 4th. I think they'll have a good season, similar to last season. We saw the talent like Kane and Ali, who is playing well above his age, and they just have so much talent for a team that really hasn't been together, for that long. You had players like Dele Alli coming from MK Dons just the season before. Their manager Pochettino, I think, is a great asset to their club, and he really knows what to do with the players, and he knows how to create great teamwork on the field. Now, in regards to transfers with Tottenham, I think they've done a good job. They've signed 2 major players, that being Victor Wanyama from Southampton and Vincent Janssen, the striker, who I think will either complement Harry Kane, or when Harry Kane isn't on form or is busy or is tired, he's always a great replacement to have up top. I think they're 2 good signings. Do you think they are?
It's amazing signing. I've seen only a little bit of Vincent Janssen, so it's like I know that he'll be probably a good compliment for Harry Kane and probably give him a spell in some games where they probably want to rest him for, or maybe it's like Champions League type stuff. But Victor Wanyama, I think he's been a good player for Southampton, a player that's been wanting to get out and really show what he can do on a little bit of a higher top tier team. And I think this is going to be another good sign to add to that midfield to really shore it up a bit. So I can't wait to see what he does with the likes of Lamela and Eriksson alongside him.
Now let's discuss Watford for their next season. I'm predicting them to finish in 16th. I really don't think they have much to offer in regards to, actually comfortably finishing outside of the relegation zone. I definitely think they'll be threatened. Now, one of the most disappointing things I thought in the off-season was their transfer business. They've signed players who aren't very big. For example, I have here Sinclair and Zuniga. They have kept Deeney and Igalo, who I think are their 2 best players, and they're really huge. But do you think they've done enough in the transfer market to keep them out of the relegation zone?
Not really. I think they're going to be one of those teams I won't even lie, probably around 18 to 15. It was hard to pick for them, but I don't see them not fighting for relegation because it's one of those things where what happened last year, I don't know if they just hit a spell where the strikers weren't scoring, or was it that teams figured out how to defend against them. It was weird watching them draft. And just like some of their signings were a bunch of players where I don't know a lot of their signings. Maybe they're going to be good compliments to what they do. Jerome Sinclair from Liverpool, okay. The Ecuadorian they got, or was it Purvis Estupiñán on loan from Udinese. It's like, I don't know if that's enough to really keep you out of relegation. I think it's one of those things where they had a decent enough season last year, but it's not going to be probably enough to keep them out of dropping into the hole this season. So they'll probably – I wish them the best, but I just don't see this team being that strong this season.
It is going to be an incredibly tough season for them. They just haven't done enough over the transfer window for me. They also sacked their manager, so they've got a new one that's going to take time to adjust. That will also be a big burden on their team. Now, we're 2 teams away from finishing this season preview. We have West Brom, a team that really excites, West Brom fans, but rarely they do anything for the entertainment of the Premier League. This season, I do think they will have enough they'll definitely survive the relegation zone. They're certainly not going to threaten the top 10. Where do you have them, Dwayne?
I always have West Brom sitting in that 14th slot easily. They signed Scottish midfielder Matt Phillips from QPR, so probably be a solid signing. I know he's a solid player for the most part, but I love Tony Pulis. Yeah, maybe I'm just like biased towards him. Always feel he's going to have his team sitting about 14th every season. Good structured defensive team. They'll counter when they need to. They'll just look well organized. They'll always do enough to get by. He'll hit his 40 points and they'll let his team play wide open a bit more, and then they'll steal some points from teams they shouldn't. Lose the games that they most likely should. And it's always going to be tough to go to West Brom because they're going to be such a structured, well-organized team. So I have them at 14.
And they have lost Sessegnon, who I thought was a great player for them last season. But exactly as you've said, I'm going the same. They're going to finish in 14th. If you're below West Brom, you've definitely got a problem. But if you're above them, you should be fine. Now, finally, the last team, West Ham United, they've moved to their new stadium, the Olympic Stadium. Do you think this is a good change, or is it a burden playing at a ground that is different to their fortress that was Upton Park?
For the fans, it's going to be like a burden, I believe. I just felt in Park, just all the history and the feeling. Every time you watched the game and all the bubbles blowing, you felt that vibe coming through your TV screen. Yeah, as funny as that sounds, because it just seemed like the fans were really into it. As for how I don't know, the players, they probably adjust rather quickly, but as the fans adjust, the ambiance in general, it's going to be a bit different than I think they're going to be used to. And it's going to take some time to really develop it into interest.
And I definitely think they're going to do well this season. I'm predicting them to finish in 7th. I've seen their friendlies that they've had at their new stadium, also the Europa League qualifiers. They're doing very well there. Look, it's a bigger crowd, may create more of an atmosphere, although Upton Park was nice and small and they had kind of more of an energy buzzing in there. But I do think they'll do well this season. They've got clearly Dimitri Payet, just a sensational player. And I think they're going to finish in 7th. They're going to have a good season. Now, I thought that we were finished here in the Premier League season preview, but I completely left off Manchester United and Manchester City. I don't know how I did that, but we're going to return to them now. Manchester City, I'm predicting them to finish in 1st position. For me, the addition of Pep Guardiola as their manager, just a simply world-class manager. The signings they've made have been sensational. You've got Stones, you've got Gundogan. So many great players. Do you expect them to finish 1st or a little further down the table?
Well, I can't choose them 1st because then I would lose my United, fan club gift card. So no, I'm going to have them 2nd, even though I will agree with you. I don't know who's going to finish 1st. It could be United or it could be City really this year, it's tough. It's flip a coin. Who's going to actually be healthy? Team really gels together 1st, and who's going to have the best season. All of the signings City have made, I've been players that I'm high on. Stones, Leroy San. I even like Gundogan, one of my favorite players from Borussia Dortmund. Every signing they've made, I've had no problem with it. I want to see what Nolito does from Celta Vigo. Just all of these signings have been good signings. And then Pep as your manager, putting it all together. It's just a matter of how quick they gel, really, to see if they're, it's 1st or 2nd for them. But I'm not allowed to choose them 2nd, or I wouldn't be allowed to the red side of the city. So I'm going to choose them. Well, I'm not allowed to choose them 1st, so I'll choose them 2nd.
I know you want to let us know, where do you think Manchester United are going to finish this season?
Well, it's funny. They're 2nd or 1st too, which kind of sucks too, because it's like, you got to choose them 1st to be a fan. But in your heart, I see them 2nd. It's going to be Pep's. It's going to be Mourinho. Mourinho's 1st year actually putting the team together. A lot of these players gel. 2nd or 3rd is reasonable where you can see them fall. Pogba, that's a great signing. Ibra, we're going to have him for one good season and see how much we can get out of him. See the development of players like Martial, Jesse Lingard. See where he plays Mkhitaryan. See if he keeps Rooney, the weight that keeps holding us back, as in the eyes of men, if he still sits in that number 10 slot. And see how quick Eric Bailly actually adapts himself to Premier League. So they're 2nd or 1st. It's a coin flip really between these two teams. That's why it's hard for me. But in my heart, I want in my brain, I want them to be, well, in my heart, I want them to be first, but in my brain, I see them as a second place team, which isn't a bad season compared to what we've had in over the last couple of seasons. So
I highly rate Mourinho as a manager. I think he's a winner. He's really fierce. He wants to get the job done on the pitch. I think he knows what he's doing tactically. I wouldn't say as good as Pep Guardiola. I think Pep Guardiola would win the tactical battle. Manchester United, sorry to say, they're going to finish 5th in my prediction, but they could finish first. They could finish second. I think it's going to be that close. Could be a matter of 5 points separating 5th place and 1st place. The amount of talent we're seeing this season in the transfer window is incredible. And I think they're going to finish very close to number 1, but I'm predicting 5th place. Now, I don't know what I've done here with the team order. I've just completely left off 2 more teams. We have 2 more to go, actually. I thought it went a bit too quickly. Burnley, they're back in the Premier League. How do you expect them to go under their manager, Sean Dyche?
I see Burnley as 19th. I just don't rate Burnley at all. Yeah, it's just one of those teams where, yeah, they've made some signing. They have the Icelandic midfielder from Charlton Athletic. What's his name? Gudmundsson. I don't know much about him. I don't think it's going to be that good of a sign. Another Charlton Athletic goalkeeper, Nick Pope. None of their signings are going to be enough to keep them up. Burnley, last time they were up, didn't do good enough. I mean, I like their manager and all, but it's just not a team where they're going to have enough firepower to actually stay afloat. So I think 9th team's where they'll go, and they'll just drop back down, to be honest.
I think you said it all there. I completely agree. Finally, this is the final team I've not left. I've not left any more off. We have Liverpool. This season, I am predicting them to finish in 3rd place because they have no Europe to worry about. Jurgen Klopp has been with the team for a decent amount of time. This is his 3rd season with Liverpool. He has great players, and if they're all fit, he has a sensational team. We've seen the damage they can do. They defeated Manchester City 4-0 last season. They have the talent. They have the power. It depends whether they can all pull it together, whether they want it enough. I think they will. They don't have any Europe to worry about. I'm predicting 3rd place for them. Where do you see them finishing?
I had Liverpool sitting on the outside, but as you said, it's so close. I had them at 5th. I just feel like Klopp has the players he wants. He's going to put them in the right position. He's going to have them playing that Gengen pressing style where they just press you until mistakes, and then they get the ball and just counter and get and score great goals. For me, the big thing, Sturridge, will he be healthy? Will he play 50% of the games as he always does? And in those 50% of the games, score 50% of the time? That's probably going to be the thing with them. I feel like Sadio Mayne, he'll get the most out of him. I'm not high on Mayne, but I feel like with Klopp, he'll get the most out of Mayne. But it's a team where, yes, without Europe and everything, they should finish. I mean, it's tough playing a lot of these with how the close to this now. 5th, 3rd place team is about right for them. It's just a matter of, as it goes with a lot of these teams, where the injuries come from, how quick they drop out of competitions, how far they go in other competitions, and just how well balanced and easily they begin to start to gel with a lot of these new players into the team. So,
Jorginho Wijnaldum from Newcastle for £25 million. Look, it's a pricey, price to pay for a player. Also, he is very good. I'm not sure if that's 100% worth it. I think he will do good things for the club. They may have spent a little more than they need to, but it is 2016-17 season, and the money that is going around, 25 million, almost isn't much. What's your thought on money nowadays in the Premier League? Do you think we're undervaluing it? Do you really think that Paul Pogba's worth is £92 million?
When it comes to like a lot of the money, or you mean like you heard because you're breaking, like you said, Pogba, so is he worth it?
Sorry, have we paused? No.
Yeah. All right. Now, what were you saying? Was he worth £90 million? You were talking about Pogba.
Yes.
Yeah. The money is so different nowadays. I guess maybe 90 is the new is the new 40. So or 45. That used to be like the thing. Oh, you could poach a good player for 45. I don't worry about the money as much because so much money comes in from so much different revenue of jerseys and stuff, and then the player is gonna, people are gonna buy his jerseys, just the TV deals. They're gonna want you and stuff from that. So I don't know. It's weird. I look at the money as just it's not a big thing spend what you need to get the player you need, because it's going to pay you back in the long run from all the other advertising, probably winning if the player is good enough. With like a player like Pogba, he is going to help you win, unless he just absolutely crumbles, which he doesn't crumble under pressure. We know Pogba usually doesn't, minus probably whatever people might say about him in the Euros. But a player like this is going to pay you back tenfold, and so sign him with whatever if you got the money, spend it, because the player is going to end up paying you back 9 times out of 10, unless you're spending 50 million on Andy Carroll's. So
when you think about it, the amount of jersey sales that they're going to make on players like Ibrahimovic and Pogba may pay back for the transfer fees. You've seen the amount of jerseys going out. Really, it won't be able to make that much money, but you got to pay it back somehow. And if they don't, they definitely have plenty of merchandise that they're selling at Manchester United. The most merchandise in the world is being sold at Manchester United. They are just such a popular club all over the world. Now, to finish, I'd like to hear your top 4 again, and then we'll compare it with mine.
Okay, so my top 4 was technically City, United, Spurs, Arsenal. What was yours?
I've gone Manchester City, Arsenal, Liverpool, and Tottenham Hotspur. It'll be another fascinating season, I think. There's so many teams. It's going to be so tight. Honestly, Manchester United, Chelsea, West Ham could be divided by only a matter of points. And I'm just looking forward to another season. So thank you again, Dwayne, for being on. It's always a pleasure.
Anytime, and we got to have you on our show to probably talk about the all-season Olympics, which has always been pretty interesting, as you know.
Will do. Yeah, sounds interesting. Big result with USA and the women's football in the Olympics this morning, losing to Sweden. So plenty to talk about, obviously, on your channel, and I'd love to come back on when I can. So thank you, everyone who's watching this, either live or watching it on my YouTube channel after we've made this. Hope you enjoy the Premier League season, and I'll see you next time.